young children who are perpetrating on other children, that has come from somewhere else. So we're trying to find out if they were abused as well. So that's why they would come to the center. We do other things. I always tell our law enforcement and DCFS folks that if you need something, we're here for you. Unfortunately, last year we did 541 interviews. Our staff talked to 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 kids a day, and we're experts at it, unfortunately, but we are, and so we sometimes get called in to do other things. We may just do at-risk kids where there's no actual allegation, but a sex offender may be living in the home. We've done child witnesses to murder, where they want a child's statement taken for whatever they saw related to that type of crime, and we provide that service as well. We have interviewed 2-year-olds, and it's amazing. I think sometimes adults don't give kids enough credit. We had a statement from a 2-year-old about child pornography on a computer, and there's someone in prison right now from the statement of a 2-year-old. And we've also, the oldest that we've done since I've been at the center is a 25-year-old who had Down syndrome, and the law enforcement person handling that case felt like they would be better served at the center, and so they were brought there for their interview as a victim rather than at the police department. We have done some emergency and off-site visits. We have gone to the hospital to do an interview because in that case it was because we weren't sure who the perpetrator was, and it was suggested it might be a parent, and the hospital did not want to release the child to a parent that may be abusing them. And we've also had to one time go to a mental health residential facility because that child was not safe enough to leave their facility and come to us, so we went to them. So we do our best to do whatever we can to help our colleagues in investigating these cases and providing child-friendly services, developmentally appropriate services for the kids. So what do we provide? We provide the forensic interview of these children. Our interviewers are specially trained. They go through an incredible amount of ongoing training to stay up on research and child development. It's very child-focused, it's child-friendly. Our interviewers, probably one of the biggest things is child development and understanding what information a 2- and 3-year-old can give is very different than what information a 15- or 16-year-old can give. And kids will often give answers to questions that make sense to them but may not make sense to us as adults, and so it's our job to make sure that the questions that are being asked are appropriate. And you know, law enforcement loves to have a nice package and as much detail as they can to go do their investigation, but sometimes a child is limited on what kind of information they can give, and so it's our job to educate and help ask questions in a way that the child can answer them and give them good information and just protect their development and their needs. We also will cut off an interview if a child is getting upset and can't finish an interview, so that their emotional needs can be dealt with and not just to get additional information from them. We provide case management services. Every child and family that comes gets assigned to one of our 2 case managers. They meet with the family while the child's being interviewed and assess needs, connect them to resources. Just this past year through the Mental Health Board in Madison County, we were able to add counseling services, and for some of our clients we've been able to offer up to 8 sessions, so that's been really helpful, and our case managers connect with them, and then they follow up with them after the case for as long as the parents want to participate. We have some cases where the parents are still calling us 2 and 3, 4 years later. We have some parents that don't want to be contacted again after they leave the center, so we totally base that on what the parents want and how connected they want to be to us. The other thing that we do is coordinate the multidisciplinary team, and this is our multidisciplinary team. Pretty much every interview that happens at the center, there is someone from the state's attorney's office, there's someone from law enforcement, and there's someone from the Department of Children and Family Services, as well as our staff serving this child. Law enforcement, of course, does the criminal investigation and is responsible for that and then filing any charges that are appropriate. The Department of Children and Family Services is responsible for the child's safety and any needs that the family has related to child abuse and typically their stance is to try to keep the family together, but we know sometimes in these cases we can't do that. The state's attorney's office, it prosecutes the cases, and I'll show you some stats later in the presentation. They are excellent in this county at working with us, and I mean, if you read the local papers, it's almost every day in the paper you see one of our cases is in the paper. So they do an excellent job of getting the bad guys off the street. Medicals, it's really interesting, and I just want to point this out to you because it's kind of fascinating to people. But in 97% of cases where there is reason to believe that there was actual sexual abuse, there is no medical evidence. So the crime movies and shows that you see on TV really are not representative of how things happen in the real world. And most of the time, only 3% of the time, do we actually have medical evidence of a crime. But that's not the only purpose that we send our kids for medicals. Kids feel like their bodies have been violated. They're worried that they're going to grow up and be weird, or that someone's going to know that someone did this to them when they get older. And so part of the purpose of the medical exam is to gather any forensic evidence, to treat any STDs or tears or anything else that's going on, but also to let the child know that their body's okay and that they're going to be normal and that no one's going to know unless they tell them that something has happened to them. And then the mental health perspective is just the mental health needs of the child to deal with the trauma, the family. These types of cases rip families apart. Oftentimes there are some people in a family that believe it, and there's some people that don't, and it's very traumatizing to the families and to the kids, and the kids often feel like they're carrying the weight of all of that on their shoulders. So mental health is an important perspective, and the research actually suggests that how the family responds to the abuse is more an indication of how the child will do through the prosecution process than anything else. So it's really important that our families get support and services so that they can help their kid get through this process. As I mentioned earlier, we conducted 541 interviews last year. 73 of those children were indicated by the Department of Children and Family Services for having been sexually abused, and 100 perpetrators were prosecuted or charged following a CAC interview. So I think that shows just how involved that our state's attorney's office is, and how good of a job our law enforcement and DCFS and the state's attorney's office are doing in getting these bad guys off the streets. I put this up here, it's kind of a funny, but it's to remind me to tell you something. But go ahead, give me some thoughts as to what might be happening in this picture. Don't be shy. Shopping.
Mommy's a stripper.
Mommy's a stripper. A pole dancer.
Could I miss that?
Sorry.
Shopping.
Okay, well, if you'll go to the next slide. Maybe mom was selling a shovel at Home Depot, and that's what this child was drawing. And, well, it's okay. But the reason why I put that up there is to let you know that we are not trying to find bad guys. That part of what we do is also find out when an allegation was misinterpreted or is not true, and that someone... Mommy's not a stripper. Well, if mommy's a stripper, we find that out, but if mommy's not a stripper, that's a really great day for us. And I'll give you a funny example. We had a kid that came in and said the allegation was daddy's pee was on my pee. Well, that sent everybody up in arms, brought the kid in. Well, it turns out that the child went to the bathroom in the toilet, and then dad went to the bathroom on top of it and flushed it after both of them had. So his pee was literally on his pee in the toilet. There was no child abuse. So those are good days for us, and I want everyone to know that that's our goal also. We're not trying to just put people away. We're trying to find the truth and determine what are the best needs for the families and the children. Our interviews for last year, most of them are sexual abuse, as you can see from this. We do have a few more female victims than male victims, but it's not significantly different between